In general, not talking about November, are you a good loser?
I'm not a good loser. I don't like to lose. I don't lose too often. I don't like to lose.
But are you gracious?
You don't know until you see. It depends. I think mail-in voting is going to rig the election. I really do.
Are you suggesting that you might not accept the results of the election?
I have to see. Look, Hillary Clinton asked me the same thing.
No, I asked you the same thing in the debate.
There is a tradition in this country, in fact, one of the prides of this country is the peaceful transition of power, and that no matter how hard fought a campaign is, that at the end of the campaign, that the loser concedes to the winner, not saying that you're necessarily going to be the loser or the winner, but that the loser concedes to the winner and that the country comes together in part for the good of the country. Are you saying you're not prepared now to commit to that principle?
What I'm saying is that I will tell you at the time. I'll keep you in suspense.
Well,
okay?
Chris.
And you know what? She's the one that never accepted it.
I agree.
She never accepted her loss, and
But
she looks like
can
a
you
fool.
Can you give a direct answer? You will accept the election?
I have to see. Look, I have to see. No, I'm not going to just say yes. I'm not going to say no, and I didn't last time either.
Lawmakers are reacting to President Trump's suggestion to postpone Election Day. The president tweeted the suggestion this morning. Only Congress has the power to change the date for the presidential general election. Senator Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says federal elections have taken place on time during other crises, including the Civil War.
Let's talk about the integrity of the election. Jared Kushner implied that the president could move the election day. Can a sitting U.S. president move an election day?
Actually, I haven't looked into that question under the Constitution.
Well, 2 U.S. Code Section 7 says federal election day is the Tuesday after the first Monday in November. So if you take that as a correct statute, is there any executive action by a president?
I've never been asked the question before. I've never looked into it.
As Attorney General of the United States, do you believe that this 2020 presidential election will be rigged?
I have no reason to think it will be.
President Trump tweeted that the election will be rigged, but he also tweeted that when he was losing to Hillary Clinton, and he tweeted that the day after Fox showed that he was losing to Trump. But I don't want to be too political. Do you believe, as the Attorney General of the United States, that mail-in voting will lead to massive voter fraud?
I think there's a high risk that it will.
Do you ever vote by mail-in ballot?
Apparently I did once at least.
But you believe that other people voting by mail could lead to massive fraud?
No, what I've talked about, made very clear, is that I'm not talking about accommodations to people who have to be out of the state or have some particular need not to, inability to go and vote. What I'm talking about is the wholesale conversion of election to mail-in voting.
You do understand that African Americans disproportionately do not survive COVID-19 coronavirus. You are aware of that?
I didn't hear the question.
You are aware that African Americans, black people, disproportionately die from COVID-19 coronavirus, correct?
Yes, I think that's right.
And not that it would be the first time that African Americans would risk their lives to vote in this country to preserve its democracy. But the suggestion is that them having the ability to vote by mail would somehow lead to massive voter fraud, but I won't stick to that.
No, I didn't say that. I just state, I think, what is a reality, which is that if you have wholesale mail-in voting, it substantially increases the risk of fraud.
But it doesn't make it likely.
That's all I said.
We have some breaking news right now. President Trump is suggesting the 2020 election should be delayed. He tweeted that mail-in voting would lead to, quote, the most inaccurate and fraudulent election in history. He's been on record now for a while in his opposition to mail-in voting. However, President Trump does not have the authority to set the election date or to postpone the election. Only Congress can do that. Again, President Trump's been voicing his disapproval of mail-in voting for several months now.
And there is uproar today over President Trump's suggestion about delaying the election. He tweeted, with universal mail-in voting, 2020 will be the most inaccurate and fraudulent election in history. Delay the election until people can properly, securely, and safely vote. And look, it's followed by 3 question marks.
No election, even during the Civil War, has ever been delayed in the country's history.
The date of the election is set by Congress, and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says Trump's idea is dead on arrival.
We'll cope with whatever the situation is and have the election on November 3rd as already scheduled.
this is an amazing tweet. We don't read his tweets very often, but as this devastating economic news has crossed, the president 2 minutes ago tweeted about universal mail-in voting, said it would be inaccurate and fraudulent. And here's the key. He put question marks at the end, delay the election until people can properly, securely, and safely vote. The President of the United States floating the idea of delaying the election until we can see what's going on with mail-in voting. That's a pretty stunning thing to say from the White House.
Yeah, I mean, even for this president, we understand that when he sees those numbers, what's Donald Trump do? He doesn't take corrective actions. Now he's talking about delaying the election. Again,
who's surprised?
We've got to connect everything that he's done with what he did on June the 1st and failed, then what he tried in Portland, Oregon, and now him talking about a fraudulent election, and now him talking about delaying the election. This is a president who knows, because of his own inadequacies, because of his own ineptitude, he's going to lose an election. So he thinks that he can just delay the election. Democrats, Republicans, independents that give a damn about this constitutional republic, they need to prepare.
President Trump heads to Florida to fundraise today after a tweet yesterday suggesting the November election could be delayed. He has no constitutional power to do that. Mr. Trump also continues to make unsubstantiated claims that increased mail-in voting will result in fraud. Paula Reed is at the White House. Paula, good morning.
Good morning. Jurika, the president made this headline-grabbing suggestion as the headlines were dominated by other unfavorable stories like growing unemployment, his sagging polls, and for him, the funeral of civil rights icon John Lewis, which the president did not attend. Now, the president doesn't even have the power to move the election. That lies with Congress, where this suggestion was flatly rejected.
Do I want to see a date change? No, but I don't want to see a crooked election.
It was the president's most dramatic attempt to undermine public confidence in U.S. elections, claiming without evidence that widespread mail balloting is already a catastrophic disaster and would lead to the most inaccurate and fraudulent election in history.
But I also don't want to have to wait for 3 months and then find out that the ballots are all missing and the election doesn't mean anything.
Republicans, including Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, flatly rejected the idea.
Never in the history of the country, through wars, depressions, and the Civil War, have we ever not had a federally scheduled election on time. And we'll find a way to do that again this November 3rd.
As a congressman, he didn't rest.
Delivering a eulogy at the funeral of John Lewis, former President Barack Obama warned against those trying to suppress votes.
Even as we sit here, there are those in power who are doing their darndest to discourage people from voting, even undermining the Postal Service in the run-up to an election that's going to be dependent on mail-in ballots, so people don't get sick.
President Trump's provocative suggestion came shortly after news that the U.S. economy shrank at the fastest pace on record from April to June. And a day after the U.S. reached 150,000 deaths from the virus, on Thursday, an ardent supporter of President Trump, Herman Cain, died after being hospitalized with COVID for several weeks. The former pizza CEO and presidential candidate attended the president's indoor rally in Tulsa on June 20th and was photographed not wearing a mask or social distance.
President Trump made an abrupt about-face today about voting.
He has criticized the vote-by-mail process and predicted it would be both dangerous and disastrous. Then today, the president tweeted a very different view, telling people in Florida they can trust the system and they should vote by mail. The President of the United States stunning with his tweet Tuesday. It says, whether you call it vote by mail or absentee voting, in Florida, the election system is safe and secure, tried and true. Florida's voting system has been cleaned up. We defeated Democrats' attempts at change. So in Florida, I encourage all to request a ballot and vote by mail. Now, that seems a big departure from the president's comments in an interview just a few days ago.
There is no way you can go through a mail-in vote without massive cheating.
We went to Duval County's election center today where the vote-by-mail operation is underway. Supervisor Mike Hogan says the process in Florida is as safe as it can be and that voters should vote with confidence.
Just a lot of old wives' tales that are sitting out there that make these voters think, well, maybe this is not safe. It's safe, but there are so many moving parts. It's not as safe as you and I were talking about. The guy standing there in front of me with an ID and getting his ballot and walking right to the tabulator. That's 3 steps instead of 15.
Political analyst Rick Mullaney says it's important to note a distinction in the terms and the meanings, so here's another comment from the president.
Universal mail-in ballots is going to be a great embarrassment to our country.
In Florida, you have to request the ballot. In some states, they will simply proactively send it to you if you're a registered voter. Well, registered voters die, registered voters move, Registered voters can change party affiliations. Let's face it, there's three basic ways. There's in-person, which you can do early or on election day. That is the simplest, easiest, fastest. There's absentee, and there's general mail-in. Those are the three ways. I think the president has always said, be in person or go absentee, but he's opposed to the general mail-in ballot.
Now, Florida changed the name of absentee ballots just in 2018. Now, if you want to request a mail-in ballot, you need to contact your supervisor of elections office. In Duval County, the deadline to do that is this Saturday. You can make that request. A reminder, though, early voting is going on until the Sunday before Election Day, which is August 18th.